I'm Erik Aadland. I'm runner for the United States Senate. I live in Jefferson County. I live in Pine, which is about an hour west of Denver off 285. I have a young family. I'm going on 15 years of marriage. I have 3 young children, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-month-old. I never designed my life to run for office. Never thought I'd be running for the United States Senate. I'm a West Pointer. I did 2 tours in combat. I did Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm going to take a brief aside on Afghanistan. What is happening there never needed to happen. It is so atrocious that the only reason, or the only way it could have unfolded as it has, is by design. There is absolutely no explanation for this tragedy. The buck stops at Biden, and it's an absolute disgrace. And the worst part about it is it's made the world a more dangerous place. It is emboldening our enemies. The fact that we left $85 billion worth of equipment there is unconscionable. That equipment will fall into the hands of the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians. It's going to go to the highest bidder. But the weakness of the administration, the failure there that is just inexplicable. Even a child knew how to manage that withdrawal. It never would have happened with our previous administration. It's a failure that is going to have long-reaching consequences that I'm deeply concerned. I alternate from absolute heartbreak, having served a year over there. I commanded a striker reconnaissance unit in southern Afghanistan on the border with Pakistan, and absolute rage, mainly because it's made the world a more dangerous place. But I left the Army in 2011. I went to work for a company called Noble Energy in oil and natural gas. That's what brought me to Colorado. I'm not a native, I'll let you know that. But I have 2 children born here, and we've chosen Colorado because we love this state. So I did about a decade in oil and natural gas. I finished managing a $300 million project in Israel, a project that has made Israel a net exporter of natural gas. It has geopolitical significance. I built a pipeline and a gathering facility as part of a $5 billion natural gas project called Leviathan. Now Israel is exporting natural gas to Egypt because of that project. So a significant gain for that country. And I'm proud to have been on that. But I left Noble Energy at the beginning of last year, finished up a master's degree, was focused on raising my family. When I saw things unfold in a dramatic fashion through the 2020 elections and what is going on now with the Biden administration. And see, we stand at a crossroads as a country. In one direction, we are driving headlong into absolute socialism and communism by design. I'm no longer going to soften those terms, because what we see is a destruction of the primacy of the individual, of the human spirit with this radical left agenda, with the destruction of the very fabric of this country, the very destruction of the Constitution that protects everybody, regardless of race, color, creed, sexual preference, gender, so on and so forth. In the other direction, though, and there is hope, is that shining city on the hill that Reagan spoke about. It is the opportunity and the equal opportunity that is encompassed in our founding principles. But that road to that shining city on the hill now lies through a deep and dank swamp. You see, I no longer think that this is about left or right. It's not about political parties. What we have is a government that has gone off the rails and is no longer accountable to the American people. It is a government that no longer serves its constituency. And it is equally exploiting all people, all human beings, regardless of political affiliation. See, I've been all over the world, both in the military and as a businessman. I've been in the Middle East extensively. I've been to Korea and Japan and South America and West Africa. I've been all over this country. And what I came to realize is that human beings everywhere want mostly the same thing. They want an opportunity. They want an opportunity to thrive, to fill their highest potential. They want to be able to raise a family. They want to have a roof over their heads. They want to be able to eat. And they want to mostly be left alone to live their lives in freedom. Now, over the last year plus, the government overreach that we've experienced has reached a level that we haven't seen in decades or ever. It has become onerous and extreme. In many ways, tyrannical. We have a government now that is trampling on our rights in an unprecedented fashion. It's restricted our freedom to assemble. It's working with big tech to restrict our freedom of speech. And when government works with corporations to inhibit your liberty, that's called fascism. And that's what we're experiencing. What's that?
That's very clever. That's why they call it. That's what they project out on us.
And now it's working hand in hand with big pharma and the medical industry to force things against our will. It's violating the Constitution. It's taking our power away. And when the government takes your power, it never asks you, do you want it back? No, it continues to take it. But by design, we have a government that is for the people, by the people, that all the power rests with the people. It's only that we've forgotten it as a country to a large extent. We've forgotten that we have all the power. And that really, the government doesn't give us our power. The Constitution doesn't give us that power. It is an unalienable right that is born in us. For me, it comes from God. But wherever it comes from, it's an unalienable right, and the Constitution states that. It's not the government that gives us our power. We give the government their power. We need to remember that. And when we start to remember that, here's the opportunity and here's the hope. Because the truth is on display in a way it hasn't been for a long, long time. What this leftist agenda, this socialist agenda that we're experiencing has been planned for decades. It's been the totalitarian tiptoe to take away those constitutional rights and reduce the human being to a machine, to something that can be exploited, to something that is, we now have a government that thinks that the people exist to serve the government instead of vice versa. I'm running for United States Senate to reverse that trend. And it's not just about me, it is about inspiring a movement of we the people to take our power back. Because one Senate seat ultimately doesn't make the difference, although it does change the balance of power in the government. If we're going to reverse the current trend of our government and restore it to one that supports all human beings, left or right or in the middle, it doesn't matter. A government that is for the people, by the people, or by the people, for the people. Sometimes I mix that up. Then we have to assert ourselves. And so here's the call to action. We take our power back now, uniting as American people. We can't do it just as Republicans. It's not possible. 43% of the state of Colorado is unaffiliated. But even that is not enough. For us to turn the government back to one that serves all of us, it takes a movement of us taking our power back collectively, recognizing that there's more that unites us than divides us. I'll wrap it up shortly and take questions. We're in a time of unprecedented crisis. We can see it everywhere. From a porous, and they're mostly contrived. They don't need to happen. Whether it's the crisis on the southern border, whether it's the abusive and reckless spending of our government and Congress, whether it is the catastrophe in Afghanistan, whether it is the destruction of energy independence that benefits China, by the way, on and on and on, we're a nation in crisis. And it's mostly contrived. These are crises that did not need to happen. And because they're happening, I see an underlying design. And what I see is the consolidation of power in a way that it is unacceptable and cannot stand. But if we come together and we all stand up, and whether that's running for office, whether you feel inadequate or not, there are opportunities to run for office everywhere. We don't have enough Republicans in the state contesting those seats. Or whether it's becoming involved within the Republican Party, becoming a precinct captain or a district captain or an adjudicator, a poll watcher, so on and so forth. There are opportunities for us to take this country back now, if only we unite. We've got to be smart about it. We've got to change our messaging. We can't continue to do the same things the Republican Party has done and expect different results. We've got to find a way to connect with human beings. Connect first, and then bring in the policies that have a provable history of working. Bring in the logic and the facts that are inviolate, that stand up to scrutiny. But if we come together as an American people, not just as Republicans, but as American people and human beings, and recognize the anti-human nature of this leftist agenda, then we take our country back. It can be done, and it must be done. And now's the time. There's no time to waste. I think if we allow it to proceed any further, we may lose that opportunity. But Americans everywhere are waking up. The left is waking up. They're saying they don't want the racist ideologies of critical race theory taught in their schools. They don't want their children sexualized in a way that is just inappropriate. They don't want their freedoms restricted under false pretext. So now's the time. Now's the opportunity. We can do it. We have to come together, put aside our differences, unify on some common core principles. I think the Constitution is a good way to do that. But in other language, it is individual rights and liberties. And not ceding that to some authority figure that cannot be trusted, that has lost all credibility. Whether it's the government itself or Big Pharma, these institutions have lost their credibility. We recognize that. We come together, take this country back starting now. Anyway, I'm gonna pause there, take some questions. Appreciate your time. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm Erik Aadland. I'm running for United States Senate. Okay.
So, do you think we should have gone to Afghanistan to begin with? Or do you believe whether or not we should have left at some point in time?
I think we should have left more than a decade ago. So when I was there from 2009 to 2010, I quickly realized that we were never going to build a nation in Afghanistan. It's 200 to 1,000 years behind us culturally. It's tribal. There is no real nation. There's no country called Afghanistan other than the one we've defined. We were never going to build a nation and establish democracy there, and I knew that within days of being on the ground there. I think that potentially and I don't have the intelligence that led to the initial invasion, maybe that was justified. You know, at a time after 9/11, there was a lot of confusion. However, there's judicious use of force. And as a nation, we forgot that. We don't need to be the world police. We need to put this country first. Our military exists to defend the Constitution and to defend our freedoms, American freedoms. We don't need to propagate freedom across the world. You know, to do so is extremely arrogant in many ways. So I think we should have been out of there. And by the way, everyone all the way up to General Milley and Lloyd Austin and the president knows how to withdraw in an orderly fashion and not create a humanitarian crisis. and not leave $85 billion worth of equipment to fall in the hands of the enemy. What's that?
It was almost like they were handing it over to them.
They're not sort of, they did.
They
Well,
did.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
You
So,
have to be a
you
genius.
can't credit
You have
them,
to
but,
be a genius.
you know, slow China Joe.
How much value that would have had in like Taiwan.
No, but it's done on purpose, purposeful, it's absolutely purposeful.
It was done.
You mentioned that strategically, the Republican Party and yourself need to do things differently in order to get into the heads of the populace out here. So strategically, would you give us your thoughts about how you can deal with the swamp that exists in the Republican Party and the media and all of that, and how you can bravely walk through that quagmire of hell?
How I could do that individually?
As a part of your campaign and winning this election.
I mean, I think it takes I had somebody tell me that what I was going to face in running for this office was going to require more courage than my combat tours and facing an enemy that I could see. I think in many cases that's true. We have a corrupted establishment that will do anything it can to hold on to power. We need to bring candidates into running for office who are truly sincere and truly serving their country. And I think that we are in a situation where that's becoming more and more common, where people are rising up because they see the danger we're in. Just like I told you at the beginning, I never planned to run for office. It was not in the cards for me. This was.
I guess more specifically, how do you personally, and the team that you're collecting, plan to do that? What's step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? What does that strategic plan look like?
How do I get elected? Well, first I have to win the Republican primary. So I'm going through the assembly process. And I mean, that starts with connecting with conservatives and Republicans and delegates in the assembly to win that process. And, you know, there's a measure of connecting with what has to happen for a candidate to win statewide in Colorado is to connect with conservatives and Republicans without alienating them, but also be able to connect with the middle and the left. Because we can't just win this as Republicans. It's not possible. I could activate every Republican in the state and lose the election. And Republicans out there need to realize that we have to connect with the middle and the left. The strategy to do that is to first connect with the heart, so that people know that I care, right? That I'm actually going to be a servant to the constituency, not serving the establishment or the DC swamp. And part of that is having meetings like these all over the state so people can meet me face to face and recognizing that I'm sincere in my purpose in order to protect my children's future, in order to protect your future, and make sure that the values that I hold dear in this country are upheld. It's grassroots campaigning. But the messaging has to be different, because as conservatives, we often connect here. We've got all the right policies, we've got all the right facts, but for those who are, and I know I have a lot of friends who are liberal. They're good people. They're sincere in their beliefs. I don't think they make sense logically, and history has proven out that socialist policies fail everywhere, every time. We don't need any more historical examples, but they feel that those perspectives are compassionate. So as conservatives, we have to find a way to ensure that we are coming in with compassion and with a heart-centered connection, and then bring in the facts and bring in the logic with good policies and good solutions that actually work. How do I convince everybody? I mean, it's partly having these conversations.
From what you're saying, have to figure out a way to connect particularly